Hi, welcome to Eye Openers. I'm your host, Brittany Drozd, and each week I bring you insightful conversations with entrepreneurs that will help you make more money, become a strong leader, and build a business culture that you're proud of. Grab your coffee and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Eye Openers. It has been a while since you guys have seen me live, and I'm so excited to be back. And I have a really fun guest to kick off this season with. Welcome to the show, Josh. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And just like always, we have to have something to drink that is going to kind of help us get into that eye-opening mood. So for me, since you guys have seen me last, I've moved out west. So it's currently 9:30 in the morning here. And I'm still drinking coffee, yes, because that's what I do. How about you, Josh? What is your eye-opening drink today?
I'm not a coffee drinker, but I have kombucha.
Okay, kombucha, great. I saw the other day something out here where they had spiked kombucha.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wonder if that defeats the purpose if you're trying to be healthier and you're drinking at the same time. I don't know, but I'm not.
I have not had it. I have seen it, but
you're sure
this is
that's
not
not the spiked one. Okay.
This is not spiked.
That could make for a good show. So a friend of mine suggested I start using different mugs each time I do this show, which I said, like, what do you think? I'm going to start buying like 30 mugs. But I did see this one the other day and it kind of says, why not? Oh, there. Why not? And that is kind of my theme for these last few months. Why not? Like, why not move across the country? Why not interview some people and hear about what their ideas are about what's great for business right now and what some big opportunities are? And I have found that when I approach this, why not, lots of things open up for me. Has that ever happened for you? Kind of shifting your perspective?
Sure. So you mean shifting my perspective from a mug? I don't know that I have any mugs that have shifted my perspective. But
just the question of why not?
For sure. Yeah. Oh no, I think it's a driving question for anyone who's thinking entrepreneurially, right? Like why not and how can? So like, I think a lot of people say, that could never happen. Why not? It opens things up. I agree totally.
Awesome. So that's a great kickoff. But before we get started into the top questions, I want to give you an official introduction here. So Josh is the director of the southern region of the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center. Some people know it as the SBD, and they're located at URI, University of Rhode Island. You work with startups, existing businesses, both high growth and Main Street, to help them launch, grow, and transition successfully. We want to hear more about that and some specific programs within that later in the show. But really, my audience fits that exactly. And so that's why I wanted to have you on to just speak with them about all the opportunities that exist, but really just your knowledge base, your wisdom of having worked with so many of these businesses and business owners and hearing about what are some awesome opportunities that maybe people don't see and what have been some challenges. So to give you to finish off your bio, right, you have helped hundreds of businesses develop, test, refine their business models, and access capital to grow. But prior to this, you had also managed experiential education and university engagement at Loyola in New Orleans, and you have an MBA from there, but now you call Southern Rhode Island home again. So welcome to the show officially, Josh. Thank you again for being here.
Thanks so much.
And I'd like to start with something a little bit unexpected, but it's really a vision question. So if 3 years from now, you and I were to speak and you said, oh my gosh, Brittany, it's so great to hear from you. How's it going? What would you love to tell me about that you achieved, accomplished, or something that had transpired in the last 3 years that you were just really excited to share? What would that be?
So my work, as you said, at the Small Business Development Center, but even more broadly, I see my sort of work as community economic development. So I think the two areas that I'm most excited about growing professionally are around business transition, actually, what they call the silver tsunami. A lot of baby boomers retiring, and the need for, we're a public service, the SBDC, and my personal mission is sort of a public service mission as well. So developing economic development resources for those businesses that are transitioning, especially, later I think we'll talk about second stage businesses. So that's I think the area that I'm most interested in growing in the coming years.
Silver tsunami. So I had not heard that before. That is awesome. And I'm definitely going to use that.
Yeah.
So what exists, like what would be the most ideal outcome in 3 years to like have transitioned some of these organizations? What would a successful transition maybe look like? What are you guys hoping to see?
From our end, we provide these resources and services and develop programs for businesses. So I think, recognizing that this baby boomer retirement is going to lead to a lot of transitions, and that can either be, it's going to be disruptive at some level, but it can be a economic development opportunity for the state, or it can be, a challenge, or could do, negative effects. So I think it's really about developing really robust set of programs and resources for those businesses, especially the ones that wouldn't have it otherwise. It's a scary thing to transition your business. I've talked to a lot of business owners who say, I learned how to start a business, I learned how to manage a business, but no one ever told me how to close a business or transition a business, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really about the robustness of the programs that we can develop and the resources and services for those businesses.
Great point. So in your experience so far, what have been some unexpected challenges with transition?
So transitioning businesses is like a really complex thing. I think that's why it's personally and professionally like gratifying. It's I enjoy problem solving and helping people, and it wraps that all up, right? And so there's so many different balls in the air when you're talking about transition a lot of times. And so you have to work with all of these things. How am I going to figure out the value of the business? How am I going to plan for how I, protect that value, grow that value, and create a plan that I can, reasonably transition? What are my options for exiting the business? All of those things, each of those things present their own set of challenges. And so I think that's, I've seen that in working with a lot of small businesses. It's difficult to navigate all of those things. So yeah, it's each of those pieces. Sometimes there's a family dynamic as well. That adds another additional level of challenge. Sometimes if it's a smaller business, the number of buyers that are out there, how do I find a buyer? How do I prepare it? Maybe it's an internal sale to employees. It's so many challenges and questions.
That's what I've actually heard a lot is, how do I find a buyer for my business? Right? They're doing something really niche, or just, gosh, people just don't know the answer to that, or even where to start.
It is. It's a difficult question, and it's I think that's where there's a need for those kinds of resources and that kind of support. To a certain extent, there are a number of folks that use business brokers and have had good experience with that. There's obviously the stuff that gets posted online on these business buy sell websites. That's challenging. Most of those businesses that get posted online don't sell. And so it can be really challenging, identifying key employees or potentially all of your employees. It's thinking through that plan is really important, because there are so many things you can get caught up on.
Right. So with this silver tsunami that's coming, what do you see as the greatest opportunity for you, for the SBDC within that? What's like the responsibility, but also the opportunity in there?
Yeah, the opportunity is to, there's bigger small businesses that are going to have professionals who can help them in the transition. Accountants, attorneys. You should always have accountant and attorney involved in the process anyway. But I think some of these smaller, still some second stage businesses need this set of resources. We're a no cost confidential resource for businesses. So it's a scary thing having someone to talk to who can be objective, who can offer good fact-based, evidence-based sort of resources and information. So that's really where we see the opportunity we do one-on-one business counseling. It's sort of a
Right.
hybrid between counseling, coaching, and consulting as needed. And so that's where we would really, build out that kind of programming. That's what we're looking
Right.
to do.
I just want to jump in and say, like, I have talked to so many small business owners, like everyone from a solopreneur, like just running your own, like essentially being self-employed, to people who have dozens of employees. And
Mhm.
the idea of talking to somebody like openly, intimately about your business can be so scary. And the
Mhm.
fact that this is available for free
Mhm.
and that you have access to capital, like if that's something that they need, but
Mhm.
the fact that you can take that information, you hold it in confidence and really give them the best advice because there's no conflict for you. Like
Mhm.
they're not paying you, you can
Mhm.
really give them the best advice you have and the
Mhm.
best resources you have. And this is just invaluable. I can't tell you how many times I've got on the phone with somebody and they're just terrified to tell me about their business. And I just try to set the stage as openly as I can, as unbiased as I can. Um, but I hear this in the question all the time. Like people are like, how are you doing? How's your business doing?
Mhm.
And I think there's so much pressure to be like, it's great. Things are
Mhm.
going great. It's just kind
Mhm.
of like when someone asks you how you are.
Mhm.
But if you can enter into the space where it's okay to be like, you know what? Things aren't going well.
Right.
I need help. I don't know where to start. I feel like a failure because it's not going well. And I am clueless about where to go. Like just the fact that this is available is so beneficial to the greater community, but also to these entrepreneurs that sometimes feel like they're on this road alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that's, we feel the same way, that it's an important public resource, and that it's true that when we talk to business owners, there's a, there's like a sigh of relief in talking to us a lot of times. I can't talk to anyone about this. I don't know, I don't want to say anything to anyone publicly in any way. But yeah, being able to, you know, even the question of how do I figure out how much my business is worth? Who's going to buy it? What are they going to look for when they buy it?
Right.
All those questions are, have complicated areas of figuring things out, and you need an objective, resource to be able to say, I have a certification in business valuation, and working on one in exit planning. We don't do that formally. I don't do, business valuations for clients, but we're going to give you that sort of objective look at, you know, what is your business worth to a potential buyer.
Mhm. Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. So what kind of brought you to doing this work today? Like, and I want to ask you, like, on your personal journey, what brought you here, but also for the SBDC, like, what has made, what's created kind of the spot for SBDC and the purpose that it's serving.
I've had an interesting journey, maybe not a straight line. My initial studies uh, and work was in music, and then in theology and ethics, and in ministry, and then in business.
Wow.
So I've gone I've gone a few different ways. I think the common thread is around service and helping folks, around solving problems, and building relationships. And so that's sort of, I was doing my MBA at Loyola in New Orleans and had a wonderful community there. Got connected to the startup community and the small business community, worked for the Small Business Development Center there. That's how I sort of fell into, wow, this is a place where that set of values around service, can meet up with, and that desire around community economic development can sort of meet up, and that's where I fell into this and fell in love with it. It's great work.
Hmm. Awesome. And how about from the SBDC angle, like what kind of brought this organization to be and what was like the greatest need that I guess the government saw um, and how is it filling it?
So SBDCs have been around since the 80s, and the Rhode Island SBDC was founded in 1983, I believe. Um, and I think there was a recognition leading up to that, and advocacy work leading up to that, recognizing the value of small businesses to our economy and to our communities, and that small businesses, we've seen the data that's out there. They're job creators. They are they're engines, and whether you say backbone or lifeblood, or you hear all those different terms, but it really is true. I mean, they're so vital to the communities that they're a part of, as employers, as providers of valuable goods, services, experiences. So I think there was a recognition at that time that there was a need for this kind of a service that could be complementary to professional services that are out there, but make sure that small businesses, people starting, growing, transitioning, would have these kinds of resources. And that stayed true. I think that, I wasn't involved in it from its very beginnings, but from what I've heard, that stayed relatively constant.
Okay. So what are some of the greatest challenges that you see either the SBDC or yourself are facing right now, or the small businesses that you're working with? What are some of the greatest challenges that you see coming through the door?
Well, this past year and a half has been pretty crazy. I don't know if you'd heard, but so there's definitely, this past year and a half, it's also been certainly professionally gratifying in terms of doing really good and needed work.
Right.
So every business has been obviously affected by COVID, and so people, facing challenges with cash flow and finances, identifying and being able to secure the various different loan and grant programs that were out there, navigating all of that kind of stuff. And then, the challenge of transition, it sped up the transition for a lot of baby boomers towards retirement. I think you see that not just in the private sector workforce, but in public sector and elsewhere. So yeah, it's sort of accelerated certain things that were already happening, accelerated things toward e-commerce and other sorts of the things that were already in motion. I think it really accelerated, which presents, I think, as entrepreneurship, every challenge is an opportunity on the other side of it, right? So,
Right.
so with the challenge to you, I would talk to businesses about their business model, and sometimes it was like, oh, you're talking like, this is sort of academic, and how does it apply to me? Suddenly, your business model falls apart because of the pandemic, and you have to figure out, how the heck do I reach my customers? How the heck do I keep delivering value? How the heck do I stay connected with them? Those are all business model questions. Now I have to go from the business model that I've known to, innovating and changing that. So I think those pandemic related challenges and opportunities are definitely the biggest ones. And it's accelerated everything, in that one.
Mhm. Right. So that's another great point, that you guys do a lot of the business modeling or business planning for people. So if they're in startup, or even if they're already established, that might really be beneficial.
Mhm.
What is like a breakthrough moment, or a moment of insight, right? An eye opener that happens when people are in the door with you guys, and has there been a theme, maybe even just over the last few months, or what are some really significant moments where it really changed the perspective of the business owner, or what they saw was possible for them?
Yeah, I think we're in the business of opening eyes. Hopefully, that's and it has to be. I think you probably know this well too. It's in this world of sort of coaching, counseling, consulting. It's people's eyes are open when they're ready, and if they're not ready, they won't. So we find, whether it's an eye opener on the business model side, where people say, oh, I thought I was going to go in this direction, and then I, looked into it further and I totally pivoted, right? Or the pandemic made me pivot. That sometimes I've seen that kind of an eye opener a lot with businesses. With, more established second stage businesses, sometimes the eye opener is, I've built this and I've gotten it to a certain level. And there's something sort of pressing down against that growth. And sometimes that something is me and my own limitations. And that's an eye opener too, right? A humbling eye opener. I might be the limitation to growth in my business. So I've seen that too. And And both of those, it's humility to have your eyes open by that kind of thing.
That's a really great point. The point about humility. I think that in my experience, right, I've seen some of the same things you're talking about, and even just my own experience as an entrepreneur, that the more open I am in releasing my ego or what I think is going to happen and just being open to what is happening, then the easier it is to make these transitions. I mean, I've been in conversation with people that are so married to a business model that is not working. And it's like, how is this serving you to be so married to this model? It's like not working anymore. And I think that we get stuck in our ways. Like we get so stuck in a pattern of like, well, this worked at one point. This served me at one point. So I got to do it forever. And now I got to double down on it, even though it's not telling you to do that. And, just even creating the space for it to be okay to shift, okay to change your mind, okay to think differently about something or think differently about how you solve that problem can really be such a beneficial service for people. And I've even tried to incorporate this quarterly into my own business where I have this reflective period that I spend just looking at what do I think is going on? What do I think is working? What needs to be transitioned? What needs to, pivot? And that is something that has created so many moments of insight for me personally, for clients, that I would just love to, chat about that a bit more. So within, when people have come in, when they've had these instances of change, tell us a story about somebody who was able to see it and actually follow through and make some of those transitions, because seeing it is one thing, right? Like taking action on it is another.
That's a good question. So I think what you're saying is so true. It is that humility, is that ability to receive that information. And, you hear people talk about working in their business versus working on their business.
Yeah.
The thing people would think about when they think about working on your business, the working in your business, people know, right? Grind. It's like, whether you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, the grind, right? And actually working on your business is stepping back and taking those looks and viewing it with a curiosity and humility to say, what's going to happen in the next 5 years? I'm trying to think, one particular business that comes to mind. I saw so many businesses through the pandemic that sort of looked and said, I have to rethink the direction that I'm going. One particular example, it's also difficult to say because what we do is confidential. So it's difficult to sort of divulge any particulars. Yes. But I have seen, a couple different local manufacturing companies, second stage businesses, who have had to recognize owners and founders who had to recognize that it was their time to sort of move out of the business, to retire, to transition. That takes a personal humility, and to be able to say, this is where this business is going. I've seen some businesses where folks have held on when they shouldn't have, and it does damage to the business. And then I've seen some businesses where they have recognized that, and that has led to a much smoother transition. And then there's also a recognition. So in another example, I know these are so vague and I apologize, but another example of a local manufacturer who has, a founding team who are reaching retirement, and then a sort of second in command who's ready to take over. There's these conversations about the value of the business, about, how it's going to transition. And what we've seen is, when we've been able to bring that sort of third party objective, sort of information and with people, it's up to them to sort of then look at it and say, what am I going to do with this? So we can't, as much as I may have a direction that I think they should go, it's not my place to do that. So.
Right. Totally. So my friend Mindy says there's an unmistakable power in having that time to reflect and then making the determination to shift the business focus. So she's also experienced this firsthand herself over the past 18 months. So it's so true, like that power of reflection. But really what you're also providing is the power of some objectivity. I think so much of this, in my experience, and this is honestly why I started the show, is because I had heard so many stories with people dealing with these same kind of questions in their head and feeling like they had nobody to talk to about it. And that my mission of this show is to really show people in that situation that you are not alone in having this experience. And there are resources available to you, which is why it was so important to me to connect with you and have you on so people could understand that some of these resources are available. And so what would you say is like the number one maybe behavior or some people identify as a weakness? I try not to use that word, but a place that could grow into that you see that kind of holds people back from whatever that next level goal is that they're trying to achieve? What's something that you see people doing that holds them back?
So I think I thought about this question both from my personal perspective and from clients' perspective. So for my clients, I think it's the digging in sort of thing, the feeling that you have to grind, the feeling that you have to work harder in a particular way, and not having the humility, curiosity, openness to get hit in the face and say like, wait, I got to rethink things. If you double down when you get sort of hit with something hard, and think I have to grind harder, that you'll get in your own way a million times. It's and I see people do it all the time. So it takes a lot of humility to get hit with something that's about something that you care about. Your business is, for folks, it's beyond their family. It's like it's their life, right? And so it's hard to feel like this thing that I built, this thing that I love, this thing that I need to take a step back and look at it in a different way and look at my relationship in a different way. So I think I would say that sort of that impulse to double down and grind and work harder at something when what you need to do is maybe step back and be a little more reflective and curious. So, and then personally, I was thinking about this question too, and I think my own answer is about my own personality is to tend to say yes to things and be excited by new opportunities. And so just turning 40, I'm thinking more about how do you focus, right? How do you sort of make sure that when you say yes, you're saying yes to things that are going to grow you personally and professionally in ways that, are authentic. So
that's cool. So being really intentional about your yes, what you say yes to. Yeah. I also hear that reframed the other way, which is, and I deal with this all the time in my work, the inflection point of learning to say no. So when we start a business, we try to say yes to everything, all the opportunities, right? To create kind of that pipeline and that flow. And then there's this really interesting point where actually it becomes so much more valuable to discern when you should say no. Yeah. Kareem is joining us, which I'm sure you
Hi, Kareem.
very well. Yeah, he says awesome to see you guys. So thanks for joining us, Kareem. Always good to hear from someone else who's also in the community. And actually, he brought us together the first time we met. 10,000 small businesses. Thanks, Kareem, for saying hi. Josh, how could people find you? How could they learn more about the resources and the programs that you guys have to offer?
So you can go to our website. So if you just Google, RASBDC, RI Small Business Development Center, you can find that, or it's rasbdc.org. Just happens to be that great government alphabet soup, right? Go Rhode Island SBDC, Small Business Development Center. And so you can find all our contact information there, or, people can certainly connect to me on LinkedIn or elsewhere.
Awesome. Any final words that you have for the audience, or any insights you'd like to share?
No, this was a great conversation. Thanks so much. I think it certainly reinforced that curiosity and humility are the foundation of learning and growing. And so cheers to that.
Cheers. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us again. And thank you to all of you who have joined us, added your questions and your comments. It makes the show more fun and interactive. I'm so excited to be back doing this. I hope to see you guys every week going forward. And if you want to be a guest, if you have any suggestions, please reach out to me and message me on LinkedIn. So thanks again, Josh, and we'll see you all soon. Have a great week. Thanks for joining us this week on Eye Openers. Make sure to visit BrittanyDrose.com/podcast for this week's show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, I would so appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. This all helps to support the show.